In the capital, everyone knows that the crown prince's tutor, Chen Qing Yan, has a woman who occupies his heart. Her name is Zhao Xuan Xuan. With every smile and frown, she ensnares him, making him willing to give up his life for her. But the emperor has arranged a marriage for him, and I have become his wife. On the day of the wedding, the woman appeared in a red bridal gown in the hall. Qing Yan loves me the most. He said that not being able to marry me is his regret, but now I can be considered as married to him. She looked proud. I calmly lifted my veil and nodded toward the guests below. In an instant, 2 groups of thugs rushed in, dividing into 2 teams, each grabbing one of them by the wrists, pulling them together and pressing their heads down. The wedding ceremony began. Since it's such a regret, I might as well help them out. Ding! RoyalStory reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. Just as the ceremony was about to start, a woman in a red bridal gown rushed into the hall. Her beautiful face was full of pride. Qing Yan loves me the most. He said that not being able to marry me is his regret, but now I can be considered as married to him. Oh, this is Zhao Xuan Xuan, the well-known beloved of Chen Qing Yan in the capital. The guests below were murmuring among themselves, including many from noble families. Yet not a single person stepped forward to stop it. Wasn't it because of the Chen family's status? The Chen family has been prominent for 3 generations, and now with Chen Qing Yan as the crown prince's tutor, they are not to be easily provoked. Even though I was granted marriage by the emperor, to them, I was merely a shell. Compared to Chen Qing Yan's beloved, after all, she was more important. Continue, Chen Qing Yan said in a low voice beside me. The scattered discussions in the crowd suddenly stopped. I lifted my veil to see Chen Qing Yan looking at me with indifference, but when he turned to Zhao Xuan Xuan, his eyes were filled with tenderness. He was comfortable, but I was not. It was a joyous day and not the time to act. I nodded toward the guests below. In an instant, 2 groups of thugs rushed in, dividing into 2 teams. The male thugs restrained Chen Qing Yan, while the female thugs held Zhao Xuan Xuan down. They brought the 2 together, pressing their heads down. I looked at the officiant beside me. What are you waiting for? Say the words. The officiant trembled. First, the couple bow to heaven and earth. Second, the couple bow to your parents. Then, the couple bows to each other. The ceremony is complete. Since it's such a regret, I might as well help them out. I smiled as I walked beside the 2. Looking at them, one was filled with resentment while the other seemed still in disbelief. I couldn't help but raise my hand and slap each of them. In the end, I couldn't hold back. Chen Qing Yan finally came to his senses. He tried to break free but was helpless against the strong thugs. He could only roar in anger, no longer the refined man he once was. Song Jia Xing. You're being outrageous. This is a marriage granted by the emperor. How can you act like this? I sneered, easing my stinging hand. I just saved your Chen family, and you still aren't satisfied? Chen Qing Yan looked shocked, and I continued. The emperor granted the marriage, yet you allow a mistress to come knocking? If this reaches the emperor's ears, do you still want to keep your position? But Chen Qing Yan wouldn't listen, his face turning red with anger. You shouldn't humiliate people like this. I twisted my aching wrist and smiled. Oh, this is for your reputation. If it gets out, it might even comfort the emperor a bit. Besides, I'm just making up for your regret, right? You should be thanking me. I signaled for the thugs to withdraw. Zhao Xuan Xuan fell to the ground, her hair a mess, and the marks on her face from the slaps clearly visible. She began to cry. Qing Yan. Chen Qing Yan held her in his arms with great tenderness. I suddenly threw the veil aside, angrily tossing it to the ground. Quickly deal with your mess. Don't think that because the emperor granted the marriage, I must be grateful. I, Song Jia Xing, can't stand this humiliation. That day, I returned to the Song residence. My father, upon hearing the news, was so furious that his beard twitched. What a Chen family! My daughter was already wronged, and now they dare to bully her. My mother was even angrier, scolding my father. It's all your fault. You accepted this marriage proposal. Now look, our daughter has been bullied to death. Fortunately, my daughter is smart. I sat at the table, eating grapes one by one, yet my mind was still on what had just happened. Chen Qing Yan must have agreed to her plans in the bedroom, but Zhao Xuan Xuan took it seriously. However, he wasn't angry. Instead, he used this opportunity to test my limits. To see just how much I could endure. The Chen family has served 3 generations, they wouldn't dare to regret a marriage. But even noble families have their weak moments, especially in Chen Qing Yan's generation. They are certainly not what they used to be. My mother's family has been royal merchants for 3 generations and is quite wealthy. My dowry is certainly not ordinary. It was the Chen family that used the life-saving grace from my childhood to ask the emperor for this marriage. The Chen family prides themselves on being scholars and gentlemen. Yet they look down on me, who has half merchant blood and half military blood. But they've miscalculated. I, Song Jiaxing, have never been the gentle and demure noble girl that noble families expect. I will not be easily manipulated or bullied. Since I was 5, I have traveled with my mother through deserts and wastelands, seeing the complexities of human nature from a young age. My father is a military general, and I have trained in the army for many years. Having seen the vast world, I would never like someone like Chen Qing Yan. If it weren't for the emperor's decree, I would never marry him. This scene is something the Chen family never anticipated. At this moment, it must be in complete chaos. When I left the Chen family, I quietly left behind a few maidservants. At this moment, they secretly returned to the Song residence with the people from the Chen family. The people from the Chen family waited at the door, and those maidservants came running to report to me excitedly. After I left the Chen residence, it was in complete chaos. Guests were chattering away, and the sound of Zhao Xuan Xuan's intermittent sobbing was incessant. Chen Qing Yan only observed coldly, holding Zhao Xuan Xuan in his arms, but he was eventually disturbed by her weeping. At a critical moment, the elderly matriarch of the Chen family, who had long since converted to Buddhism, came out to take control of the situation. First, she arranged for the guests to be seated, then instructed Chen Qing Yan to invite me back. Chen Qing Yan naturally disagreed, feeling that such back and forth would surely lose face. The elderly matriarch of the Chen family raised her cane and struck him with it. Do you still want the Chen family to survive? Then she threatened using Zhao Xuan Xuan beside her. If you can't think of anything else, you must consider your beloved. Now she has become infamous. Only then did Chen Qing Yan reluctantly arrive at the entrance of the Song residence. He didn't knock or send word, he just stood at the door. Zhao Xuan Xuan was also on one side. Was he waiting for me to come out, tearfully grateful? Grateful that he had given me a way out? How amusing. This world is always like this. They always think that women are weak and should depend on men. They always believe that the Chen family, being a long-established family, is immensely noble, while my Song family is utterly crude. They wouldn't lower themselves to ask me to return. I also ignored them, but I was intrigued. I instructed the steward to open the gate and brought out a chair, sitting in the inner room eating fruit while watching them. My father couldn't stand it and pointed at the door while scolding. People should have self-awareness, don't always think of good things without reflecting on whether they can handle it. This world is truly strange, those who are wrong still expect others to come and plead with them to admit their mistakes, how interesting. My mother timely served a cup of tea to my father, have a cup of tea to moisten your throat. My father drank it all and continued lecturing at the door. At that moment, Chen Qing Yan at the entrance had a flushed face but still made no move. Just then, the elderly matriarch of the Chen family arrived at the gate. She struck Chen Qing Yan with her cane and turned to my father with an apologetic expression. General Song, please forgive my grandson. After saying this, she continued to hit Chen Qing Yan with her cane, muttering, "You rascal, you are the crown prince's tutor, how can you do such thing? His Majesty values you and granted you a marriage. How could you do such a thing? Look at you, kneeling here in the wrong, and your knees are swollen from it." This old lady is interesting. With just a few words, she stated the Chen family's identity while also urging me not to cause more trouble. The marriage granted by the emperor, if this continues, it would be my fault. Chen Qing Yan also lowered his head, losing his previous arrogance. Jia Xing, it's my fault. I will ensure you are not wronged in the future. As for Zhao Xuan Xuan, I only regard her as my little sister. She doesn't understand and has contradicted you. I have already sent someone to personally teach her, so please rest assured. I picked up the teacup and drank it all, naturally wanting to meet these wolves. Elderly matriarch Chen, you know that my marriage with Chen Qing Yan was granted by His Majesty. Are you implying that knowing this still allows Zhao Xuan Xuan to enter through layers of guards? It seems your Chen family's guards are lacking. If that's the case, I will bring my Song family's guards along for more security. I turned around and looked at Chen Qing Yan, who had a face full of weariness. If it were this way from the start, wouldn't it be better? You say you've hired someone to teach her, how about this? Nanny Tang from my Song residence used to be in the palace, so let her teach Xian Xian. The elderly matriarch's face showed difficulty, but she couldn't refuse, only smiling, fearing my displeasure would make things difficult. Zhao Xuan Xuan beside her looked terrified but, constrained by the elderly matriarch, could only look at Chen Qing Yan with a pitiful expression. I smiled gently and said to her, Xian Xian, you must learn the rules well from Nanny Tang in the future. You are recognized as his sister by Qing Yan, so you are my sister too, and I will treat you well. After saying this, I clapped my hands. Chen Qing Yan beside me was startled. Look, I scared the shit out of him. Wow, isn't everything perfect now? Let's go back to the Chen residence. Let's cause a ruckus. This farce eventually came to an end. Zhao Xuan Xuan was put under supervision, and the ceremony proceeded quite smoothly. However, during the feast, guests began to discuss after drinking. To have the wedding ceremony twice in one day, this Chen gentleman must be quite fortunate. What do you know? One from the family, one from outside. The elderly matriarch of the Chen family personally came down to explain. That time doesn't count. My Chen family only has Song Jiaxing as the mistress. Qing Yan recognized Xian Xian as a sister early on. Xian Xian was merely going through the motions for the new sister-in-law. I sat in the room, enjoying tea and snacks. Listening to the maidservants' reports, I found it amusing. The Chen family still wasn't satisfied with the embarrassment. As for the rest, I didn't care. After all, my reputation had already spread throughout the capital. What I cared about was that no one should think of humiliating me, and certainly not try to step on me to rise. Absolutely not. After the banquet dispersed, Chen Qing Yan arrived late. As soon as he entered, he wrapped himself up tightly, as if I were some kind of monster. We are married by the emperor's decree. From now on, we are husband and wife in name only. If you want my affection, I can only advise you to give up that thought. When he said this, I happened to be eating a pastry, and upon hearing it, I nearly choked. I just found it amusing. How did Chen Qing Yan become the crown prince's tutor? By relying solely on romantic feelings? I removed my hairpin and threw a blanket on the ground. You sleep here, move to the door, and keep your distance from me. Chen Qing Yan, however, didn't mind rolling his bedding to the door. He was probably relieved to have preserved the innocence of his body. The next day, before dawn, the maid outside was shouting at the door. Madam, please go to the front hall to serve tea. I opened my sleepy eyes. I hadn't slept well last night. Perhaps it was the Chen family that didn't suit me, or perhaps it was because Chen Qing Yan shared the same room, making the air feel so heavy. Madam, ah! Just as the maid outside began to shout again, a cry of pain suddenly rang out. The rules of the Chen family are truly strict, calling the new bride to serve tea before dawn. I doubt there's another family like this in the entire capital. Even the princess in the palace has never done this. Could it be that your old lady is more esteemed than the Empress Dowager? I let out a low laugh. This was my maid, Jiu Hua. She had followed me since childhood and developed a fiery temperament. With her around, I felt much more at ease. The maid outside seemed to want to say something, but Jiu Hua rebutted her one by one. The arguing grew so loud that Chen Qing Yan slowly woke up from his slumber. What's happening outside? I threw the soft pillow on the couch to the ground, hitting him perfectly. I scoffed. Your good mother hasn't seen you for over 20 years. She's just waiting for you to serve tea to have a good look at you. Chen Qing Yan looked somewhat annoyed. You have no manners, she's your mother-in-law. I looked him up and down and smiled, then I must serve her tea properly. With that, I carefully dressed myself. I was ready to head to my esteemed mother-in-law's courtyard. I wanted to see who would have the final say in this household from now on. When I stepped outside, I found maids and servants kneeling all over the ground. Zhao Hua walked up to me. "Miss, they're all backstabbers." I nodded and smiled. "Oh, they're all quite loyal, aren't they? But I'll say this only once, I, Song Jiaxing, am now the head mistress of the Chen family, and all the expenses of the Chen family come from me. Everyone should keep their eyes wide open, don't let a single misstep lead to eternal regret." The crowd on the ground trembled, repeatedly nodding in agreement. Just then, Chen Qing Yan came out, fully dressed. He frowned, looking disgusted. "Song Jiaxing, you're causing a scene on your first day here. They are all old servants of the household, don't be so aggressive." I circled around him, feigning surprise. "Ah. But everything being used in this household is my money, can't I say a word? Even if this were reported to the emperor, you wouldn't have a leg to stand on. Moreover, they're incompetent. They couldn't even stop a little maid from entering the mistress's courtyard, and I can't speak." Chen Qing Yan was left speechless, his face filled with embarrassment. "Let's go quickly, my mother is still waiting." His voice was very low, and after speaking, he walked out of the courtyard. Watching his back, I felt a rebellious thought arise. With his demeanor, how could he possibly become the crown prince's tutor? As soon as I stepped into Chen Qing Yan's mother's courtyard, Zhao Hua, who had rushed in behind me, whispered a few words in my ear. I scoffed, the Chen family truly had no shame. Upon entering, my mother-in-law clutched her heart, looking pained. "Oh dear, I thought I had a well-mannered daughter-in-law, but I didn't expect, oh dear." I picked up a cup of tea from the table and handed it over. My mother-in-law looked astonished. "I haven't asked you to serve tea yet, what are you doing? This is inappropriate." I accidentally knocked over the teacup, splashing tea all over my mother-in-law. I hurriedly apologized. "Oh dear, mother-in-law, I was too anxious, thinking you'd be heartbroken if you couldn't drink my tea for even a moment. That's why I took the liberty to serve you tea." My mother-in-law looked furious. You. I kindly patted her on the back. "Mother-in-law, please don't be so agitated." At that moment, Chen Qing Yan walked in. "Song Jiaxing, what have you done to my mother?" I looked up, feigning innocence. "Qing Yan, you're wrongfully accusing me." "I was just serving tea to my mother-in-law." Seeing that Chen Qing Yan had arrived, my mother-in-law perked up, signaling to the nanny beside her. "Qing Yan, your wife is not an innocent woman." The nanny brought over a piece of white silk. It was the same piece that had been on the bed last night. They thought they could use this against me, but they were mistaken. Before entering, Zhao Hua had already informed me of this matter. I didn't expect the Chen family, who prided themselves on being upright, would be like this. I took the initiative, glanced at the piece of silk, and then laughed lightly. "Mother-in-law, as a woman, you should understand how harsh society is regarding a woman's chastity. Last night, I didn't even share a bed with Chen Qing Yan. Have you ever seen a woman accomplish such things alone? Moreover, a woman's chastity shouldn't be judged by a piece of silk. Your actions truly tarnish the reputation of an upright family." My mother-in-law's face turned extremely ugly. Chen Qing Yan pointed at me, his face full of rage. "Song Jiaxing. He didn't think that just because he raised his voice, he was in the right, did he?" As soon as he finished speaking, a group of guards from the Song family rushed in, surrounding Chen Qing Yan completely. Chen Qing Yan and his mother were startled by this sudden turn of events. Not a word could escape their lips. But I was laughing heartily. "Qing Yan, mother, you should be more careful with your words and actions in the future. These guards recognize their master. If someone were to be hurt by mistake, that would be unfortunate." Both of them were left speechless by my retort. I flicked my sleeves and left. After this incident, the atmosphere in the residence must have been figured out by everyone. When I was in the Song residence, I was not just a sheltered daughter. My parents were open-minded, which allowed me to stand on my own today. If it were someone else, they would have been completely consumed by the Chen residence by now. Now, in the Chen residence, I certainly would not live the life of a woman confined to the inner chambers, relying on my husband's affection. I must keep a close watch on the dowry I brought with me. The current Chen family is like a hungry wolf. I married into the Chen family because of the emperor's decree. But now that I am married into the Chen family, my task is considered complete. There's nothing more to worry about. After what happened during the day, the atmosphere in the residence has completely changed. Walking in the courtyard, every maid and servant is respectful. Madam, good day. Look at that. In the past, they truly treated me like a soft persimmon. However, I am in a good mood today. I immediately rewarded those sweet-talking maids with some gold coins. The maids were grateful and instantly switched their allegiance to me like reeds in the wind. But someone just had to ruin my mood. In the evening, Chen Qing Yan rushed back to the room. After entering, he informed me. Take out part of your dowry, my father needs it urgently. Of course, it's just a loan, it will be returned soon. I smiled. I threw my chopsticks onto the table. What? In such a large Chen residence, you actually want to touch the new wife's dowry? If this gets out, it will surely tarnish the reputation of the Chen family. Chen Qing Yan frowned. If you don't say anything, I won't either. How would others know? Besides, you are already a member of the Chen family, you must understand that we rise and fall together. I glanced at him. What do you need this money for? Chen Qing Yan raised an eyebrow, sensing an opportunity, and got up from his chair. Clearing his throat, he said, it's just for doing some business. I raised an eyebrow, thinking I must have misheard. A prestigious family like the Chens actually wants to engage in business? Aren't you all proud of your clean lineage and look down on merchants like us? Yet you need to borrow money for business? As soon as I finished speaking, Chen Qing Yan's face turned red, and he stubbornly spoke up. It's just a matter of necessity. I sneered, stood up, and patted my clothes. You can use my dowry, but you must write an IOU. Will you write it, or should I go find my father-in-law? Chen Qing Yan was furious. We are family, why talk about an IOU? I sighed, if I accidentally let something slip in the future. His face turned crimson, but he finally agreed. Song Jia Xing, you must keep your word, this matter must not leak out. My Chen family is a prestigious lineage. Indeed, a prestigious lineage. After Chen Qing Yan signed the IOU, he left. I instructed Qiu Hua to keep the IOU safe. Qiu Hua looked worried. Miss, are we going a bit too far? The Chen family is a prestigious lineage, they wouldn't default on a loan, would they? I shook my head at her. Silly girl, you don't understand these people. They talk about being prestigious, but inside they are already rotten. They look down on us from the Song residence, thinking we are merchants unworthy of their noble scholarly family. And yet, they still shamelessly reach out to us for money? Who knows, this money might just go down the drain. But since we have plenty of it, let's just use it to watch a joke unfold in the Chen residence. Qiu Hua nodded, seemingly understanding. After Chen Qing Yan signed the IOU for his father, he personally went to the storeroom to count the silver. Boxes of silver coins were carried to the front courtyard. This glamorous Chen residence is about to change. Once I sort out my dowry and understand the ins and outs of the Chen residence. As I walked along the path in the courtyard, I suddenly heard cries of pain. Then I remembered, in another courtyard lived Chen Qing Yan's sister, Zhao Xuan Xuan. I hurried toward the courtyard. Through the gaps in the leaves in front of the courtyard, I saw Zhao Xuan Xuan inside the house crying out in pain. At that moment, she was being personally taught by Nanny Tang, learning etiquette. After bowing, your body must be low, you cannot act out in front of your master. You must not look up or make eye contact with your master. Accompanying this were the sounds of a ruler striking and Zhao Xuan Xuan's cries. I quietly left, instructing Qiu Hua to add a gold ingot to Nanny Tang's monthly pay. Doing her job diligently deserves a reward. Since Nanny Tang is dedicated now, let's see how her efforts pay off. That evening, I ordered a banquet for the next day to celebrate for Zhao Xuan Xuan. After all, she became Chen Qing Yan's godsister and hasn't had a banquet yet. It must be known throughout the capital. That night, I discussed this with Chen Qing Yan. His face turned pale, and he remained silent. I continued to embellish the story. Xian Xian's reputation has really fallen, how will she marry in the future? Chen Qing Yan, who likely genuinely cared for her, eventually agreed. The banquet tomorrow must let Xian Xian shine. I promised. Naturally. Zhou Hua found out that when the Chen family attended banquets hosted by the nobles in the capital, Zhao Xuan Xuan always followed Chen Qing Yan's side. Dressed beautifully, she valued her appearance the most. Since that's the case, I deliberately prepared clothes and accessories for Zhao Xuan Xuan. And they were the most precious. Zhou Hua personally delivered them to the other courtyard. Zhao Xuan Xuan, like the Chen family, prided herself on being aloof. But upon seeing the luxurious accessories, she could no longer suppress her desires. When Zhou Hua returned to tell me this, I was organizing the accounts. Hearing this, I sneered inside. Let her be pleased for a few days, after tomorrow, she won't be smiling. The Chen family's reputation is still quite good, and many noble families from the capital have come here. I wore a vibrant red dress, with the accessories on my hair being those my mother prepared for me before my marriage. Low-key yet expensive. The star of the banquet made her entrance. Zhao Xuan Xuan was wearing the clothes and headpiece I had sent yesterday. She approached gracefully, instantly leaving Chen Qing Yan in a daze. After all, Chen Qing Yan had always favored the style of Zhao Xuan Xuan. She looked so pitiful, easily stirring his protective instincts. As Chen Qing Yan passed by me, he wore a look of disdain. Today's main attraction is Xian Xian. Why are you being so ostentatious? You promised me you would let Xian Xian shine today, didn't you? I couldn't help but laugh. I shot him a glance, unfazed. I've always been this way, you've known me for quite some time. As we spoke, I could hear the conversations of the ladies nearby. Zhao Xuan Xuan's attire is worth a fortune, the shimmering brocade. Indeed, the color matches her perfectly. And that headpiece, it sparkles so brightly that it's hard to look away. Chen Qing Yan naturally heard this, looking ashamed. Jia Xing, I misunderstood you. I ignored him and walked past, heading toward the ladies. I mingled among the families of the noble clans. I spoke confidently, feeling right at home. The ladies began to view me differently. After all, the effort I had put in was not in vain. I had learned exactly what these noble families liked and disliked. Before the banquet began, I asked Chen Qing Yan to bring Zhao Xuan Xuan over. I introduced her to everyone. Ladies, this is my husband's godsister. She will henceforth be our second young lady of the Chen residence. Zhao Xuan Xuan politely greeted each person. Her manners were impeccable, and her demeanor was graceful. This drew praise from everyone. Zhao Xuan Xuan was greatly satisfied. Thank you, sister-in-law. Zhao Xuan Xuan looked quite pleased. She should know that the hardships she endured to learn etiquette were for her own good. This honor she received today was granted by me. Yet, she still seemed unsatisfied. Zhou Hua took the opportunity while I was away to inform me to check the courtyard. Before I even got close to the courtyard, I heard a discussion. Xian Xian, your sister-in-law isn't bad. It's better than being the secret lover of Chen Qing Yan. Yeah, just look at that headpiece and those clothes, they must be worth a lot. Besides, you saved Chen Qing Yan's life, how could you not be welcomed into the residence? I think he's not better than your sister-in-law. Zhao Xuan Xuan's few close friends genuinely meant well. But she didn't appreciate it. Why can she enter the residence as the principal wife while I can only be some insignificant sister? And I saved Qing Yan's life back then. I can't accept this. I waved my hand, not wanting to listen any further, adjusted my hair, and returned to the banquet. Zhao Xuan Xuan arrived late. Chen Qing Yan seemed to have drunk too much, pulling Zhao Xuan Xuan close to him. He looked gentle. Xian Xian, you must do well from now on. The Chen residence is now your home. After saying this, he instructed a servant to bring out a gift he had prepared in advance, a jeweled hairpin. He personally placed it in her hair. This caused quite a stir among the guests. Lord Chen truly has a good relationship with his sister. But Zhao Xuan Xuan was still not satisfied, looking at me defiantly. I ignored her and continued to attend to the guests. Yet she turned her attention to me. Does sister-in-law consider me family too? The guests were all watching with interest. I smiled, of course, Xian Xian. I have prepared a great gift for you today. With that, I instructed Zhou Hua to bring in 3 people from outside. A couple and their son. I had searched hard for them and paid a hefty sum. Xian Xian, this is the family I finally found for you after much effort. Xian Xian, greet them, these are your parents and brother. Don't worry, even if you recognize your biological parents, the Chen residence will always be your home. At that moment, Zhao Xuan Xuan turned pale. A gambling father, a lecherous brother, and a biased mother. Zhao Xuan Xuan surely wouldn't have a good life ahead. Chen Qing Yan quickly shielded Zhao Xuan Xuan behind him. Song Jia Xing. What are you doing? The Chen residence is Xian Xian's home. I frowned. Qing Yan, I found out privately that Xian Xian has been longing for her biological parents, that's why I wanted to give her a surprise. Did you ask Xian Xian? At this moment, Zhao Xuan Xuan's face had already turned pale. She had mentioned wanting to find her biological parents in front of Chen Qing Yan, looking pitiful. Given the number of people present, she could only bite her lip and nod. But sister-in-law, how do you know they are my parents? Now that she acknowledged it, it became easier. I immediately instructed Xiu Hua to bring a bowl of clear water. Let's do a blood test, it's the most reliable. Everyone present nodded in agreement. Zhao Xuan Xuan panicked. She hid tightly behind Chen Qing Yan. Don't worry, Qing Yan, with just one test, we can find Xian Xian's parents and fulfill her wish. If it turns out well, everyone will be happy. If not, she will still be our young lady of the Chen residence. Chen Qing Yan turned back to gently reassure Zhao Xuan Xuan. Finally, Zhao Xuan Xuan stepped forward. She let a drop of blood fall. 2 drops of blood merged together. The people before her were indeed Zhao Xuan Xuan's family. I smiled. Zhao Xuan Xuan cried. Chen Qing Yan looked pleased. Zhao Xuan Xuan reluctantly acknowledged her parents. Chen Qing Yan had no idea of the seriousness of the situation. He was simply happy to find Zhao Xuan Xuan's biological parents. He didn't notice Zhao Xuan Xuan's unwillingness. I quietly enjoyed my achievements and lived a few peaceful days. But Zhao Xuan Xuan was feeling very uncomfortable. Her biological parents showed up every few days, either asking for money or threatening her. It left her mentally and physically exhausted. Chen Qing Yan had been very busy lately and couldn't care less about her. After all, it seemed there was a problem with Chen Qing Yan's father's business. The materials purchased from the South City couldn't be delivered due to heavy rain. The shop was on the verge of crisis. Chen Qing Yan was secretly helping his father and was too preoccupied to attend to her. He went out to negotiate under a hidden identity. If word reached the emperor, his position as the grand tutor to the crown prince would be thoroughly ruined. He certainly didn't want to lose his official career. During this time, I was also busy. I carefully managed the shop that my father had given me as a dowry before my marriage. When Chen Qing Yan happened to see me handling my shop with such ease, he couldn't help but look at me differently. Previously, he only saw me as a merchant's daughter and never thought much of me. Now, he had a change of heart. He had merely read a few more books and understood the strategies better, which allowed him to become the grand tutor. However, he was lacking in other areas. Now seeing me speak so confidently, he felt a bit emotional. I never expected you to be so decisive, I must have misjudged you before. I ignored him and continued to fiddle with the account books, managing my shop. In my spare time, I accompanied my mother to the temple to offer incense. Afterwards, my mother wanted to stay in the Zen room in the backyard for a few days. I helped her settle in. To my surprise, I caught a glimpse of Chen Qing Yan. He was heading towards a Zen room. I remembered that the old lady Chen was recuperating there. I felt that they were hiding something from me. Qing Yan, have you really been completely controlled by Song Jia Xing now? Old lady Chen was like a venomous snake, no longer the kind person she once was. Grandmother, Song Jia Xing is very tight-lipped, I have no way to approach her. But she is indeed quite capable, wouldn't it be better to keep her around to earn money for our Chen family? Old lady Chen's tone suddenly rose, are you starting to develop feelings for her? Don't forget, your father is getting impatient. Are you still hoping she will give you some silver? Chen Qing Yan sighed, Grandmother, I understand now. I couldn't help but scoff coldly to myself outside the door. It seems the Chen family still felt they weren't falling fast enough. If that's the case, I might as well lend a hand. After returning to the Qin residence, Chen Qing Yan's sudden concern made me uncomfortable. Jia Xing, you must be tired from looking at the account books. Why not have some lotus seed soup? I specifically asked the kitchen to prepare it for you. I looked up at Chen Qing Yan standing in front of me. I don't like drinking that. After saying this, he looked slightly awkward and then spoke. Then what do you like? I will prepare it for you. I waved my hand and laughed. What's this? Have you changed your nature? Weren't you the one who told me not to expect your love? Chen Qing Yan suddenly got angry and slammed the teacup onto the table. Seeing this, I had no choice but to pretend to cooperate with him. I picked up the teacup and drank it all in one go. How about this? Upon seeing this, Chen Qing Yan returned to his usual refined self. That's very good. I timely had Xiao Hua bring over a bowl of chrysanthemum tea. A gesture of reciprocity, drink this chrysanthemum tea. Your lips are chapped. Chen Qing Yan touched his lips, glanced at me, and drank the chrysanthemum tea in one go. But what he didn't know was that money can make the devil push millstones. The kitchen staff had already been bribed by me. The lotus seed soup was harmless, but the chrysanthemum tea was not. After all, I believe in an eye for an eye. I won't tolerate even a grain of sand. Something went wrong with the shop in the Chen family. The common people gathered at the shop's entrance, unable to deliver supplies on time. They surrounded it. This matter escalated significantly. The owner behind the shop was also exposed by someone with a motive. It happened to be Chen Qing Yan's father, who prided himself on being a person of integrity. Now, the capital was bustling with activity. In the court, officials criticized Chen Qing Yan's father harshly, saying he was shameless. This naturally affected Chen Qing Yan. After all, the grand tutor to the crown prince couldn't have a tarnished reputation. In no time, the Chen family faced a drastic change. Chen Qing Yan was demoted, and his father's shop owed a lot of money. Chen Qing Yan couldn't care less about his own suffering and came to borrow money from me for his father. I sipped my tea and casually glanced at him, who was anxious and restless. Borrowing money again? But you still haven't repaid the 10,000 silvers you borrowed before. Given the current situation, I can't dare lend you more. Chen Qing Yan was so anxious he was pulling his hair but didn't dare raise his voice at me again. Jia Xing, please help me one more time, just this once, and in the future, I will definitely live well with you. I couldn't help but laugh. He had already harmed me and still wanted me to help him. Truly shameless. I ignored him and had Xiao Hua chase him out. At this moment, Zhao Xuan Xuan came knocking. Seeing Zhao Xuan Xuan again, I was surprised at how haggard she looked. Her face was pale, and she no longer wore her usual splendid clothes. It seemed her biological parents had tormented her severely. As soon as she opened her mouth, she blamed me. Why don't you take out your dowry to give to Qing Yan? I smiled and stared at her intently. The dowry is mine, why should I help him? Don't you know he has already borrowed 10,000 silvers from me, and it has all gone to waste? Besides, what status do you have to speak to me like this? Zhao Xuan Xuan was at a loss for words. After all, she had relied on the life-saving grace of Chen Qing Yan to enter the Chen family. She relied on him to get by. The silver she had saved must have been meager. Now it seemed to have been stripped away by her biological parents. What she was doing was merely for herself, hoping to pry some silver out of Chen Qing Yan from my hands. But I saw through her intentions, and she left in anger. I only prepared some tea, watching the show is enough. Let them tear each other apart. While I was sipping tea in the courtyard, Xiao Hua came back to report to me, something big has happened in the capital. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, I smiled faintly, the good show is about to begin. The matter concerning Chen Qing Yan's father has escalated completely. It turned out that Chen Qing Yan had borrowed money from a loan shark. Unexpectedly, he was recognized by the steward. They took him to the authorities, claiming he couldn't repay the money and was trying to take advantage. Once a refined gentleman, Chen Qing Yan now looked utterly dejected, devoid of his former brilliance. He promised the steward that if he could see me, he would surely repay his debts. And so, a servant came to find me, imploring me to visit the authorities. I stood up, clapped my hands, and called to Xiao Hua, let's go watch the show. When I arrived at the authorities, Chen Qing Yan was kneeling on the ground, utterly lacking in dignity. Upon seeing me, he looked like he had found his savior. He crawled to me, clutching my skirt. "Jia Xing, save me." I glanced down at him and then turned to respectfully bow to the high-ranking official. I asked the official to help and let Chen Qing Yan repay my money. Everyone present widened their eyes in shock. Chen Qing Yan looked utterly incredulous. "Song Jia Xing, we are husband and wife. You should help me resolve the current issue first." Ignoring him, I calmly presented my case to the official. "Chen Qing Yan borrowed 10,000 taels of silver from me recently, but he hasn't repaid it, and here's the IOU. Please to investigate." The official's assistant took the document. The high-ranking official did not lose his temper but exuded authority. Chen Qing Yan ground his teeth in frustration. "Sir, this is a family matter, you shouldn't interfere." "It is indeed a family matter, but if the victim comes to complain, the authorities must take action." Upon hearing this, Chen Qing Yan collapsed onto the ground. "Song Jia Xing, you are ruthless. We are still married." I turned around and stared at him directly. "I didn't intend to reach this point, but your Chen family has gone too far. You even tried to poison me to seize my dowry. Are you really saying you knew nothing of this?" As soon as I finished speaking, the crowd erupted in discussion. How could one be so heartless as to poison their own wife? This Madame Chen indeed comes from a wealthy family, yet she encounters such unworthy people. What a vile family, posing as a reputable one, ha! Chen Qing Yan looked utterly incredulous. I knelt directly before the high-ranking official. I asked the official to thoroughly investigate and grant me justice. Chen Qing Yan thought he had bribed the kitchen servants effectively. But he didn't know that money can make the devil dance. I had originally thought he might have some conscience, but to my surprise, his heart was already filthy. When the official brought in the kitchen servants, Chen Qing Yan's face had already turned pale. He opened his mouth but couldn't utter a word. After a long while, he muttered to himself, "It shouldn't have been like this. If you don't give me money, how can the Chen family survive?" His words were heard by the high-ranking official and the surrounding citizens. In an instant, Chen Qing Yan was pelted with vegetable leaves and rotten eggs, his appearance a mess, too disgraceful to look at. He came back to his senses and tried to cling to my legs. The official's assistant immediately pinned him to the ground. The high-ranking official slammed the table. Chen Qing Yan is accused of poisoning and attempting to harm his wife. We will retain the witnesses and await further action. He couldn't leave the government office and was detained in jail. The old lady Chen ultimately could not sit still. This old woman with a heart of a snake. Every day she ate vegetarian meals and chanted scriptures, yet I wonder if she was even afraid. She tried to pull strings many times but was ultimately helpless. This matter alarmed His Majesty. Chen Qing Yan, once the crown prince's tutor, had now fallen to this state. Naturally, the emperor wanted to hear and see for himself. In the Chen residence, the old lady Chen leaned on her cane, her face filled with deep hatred. "You poisonous woman! That is your husband!" She pretended to strike me with her cane. The guards inside the residence quickly surrounded her, blocking her from me. "If your husband is gone, what good does that do you? Damn you, Song Jia Xing! May your whole family suffer." Hearing this, I stared directly at her and walked up to her. "Madam, people are watching. If anyone harmed your grandson, it can only be you. Isn't it you who advised him to harm me and seize my dowry? It's just retribution for your actions. Now it seems that it is your entire family facing disaster." The old lady Chen's face turned pale with pain, and she suddenly staggered back. Zhao Xuan Xuan happened to catch her at that moment. "Grandmother, we will find a way. There's no need to plead with this poisonous woman." I scoffed. "I had almost forgotten about you. Don't you feel guilty saying that? Chen Qing Yan is devoted to you, yet you conspired with your parents to harm him and then used his life as a bargaining chip." Zhao Xuan Xuan's face turned ashen. She hadn't expected me to investigate her background. 5 years ago, Chen Qing Yan accidentally fell off a cliff while riding, all orchestrated by Zhao Xuan Xuan. At that time, she was a maid at the horse ranch. Ambitious and eager to enter the wealthy Chen residence, she plotted with her biological parents at the horse ranch. She had prepared everything in advance, waiting for Chen Qing Yan to fall into her trap. Over the years, she had taken countless amounts of silver from the Chen residence to her biological parents. Yet when I found them, they greedily emerged to claim her identity. Thinking of the Chen family treating such a woman as an honored guest, even I, an outsider, found it ridiculous. The Chen family was thrown into chaos upon discovering the truth. Zhao Xuan Xuan was thrown out of the Chen residence. The Chen family demanded all the silver and jewelry they had given her over the years. Otherwise, they would take her to court. Old Lady Chen fell seriously ill and could not recover. The once grand Chen residence was left without a backbone, disorganized like a pile of loose sand. Chen Qing Yan's verdict was also handed down. The evidence was overwhelming. The pharmacy's servant and the kitchen's cook could all testify against him. Chen Qing Yan was sentenced to death by beheading after autumn. Upon hearing the news, the people of the Chen family were left in tears, but ultimately, there was nothing they could do. Chen Qing Yan became the target, constantly under the watchful eye of the emperor, unable to escape. The Chen family was completely defeated, leaving only an empty shell behind. When I returned to the Song residence, my parents looked at me with pity. My child has suffered. But I appeared refreshed, having resolved the burden of the Chen family. I could finally pursue the things I loved. Naturally, after Chen Qing Yan's death, my relationship with him was naturally severed. The day before Chen Qing Yan's execution, I visited the prison. Chen Qing Yan was no longer the spirited man he once was. When he saw me, he still held on to some hope. Jia Xing, save me. From now on, I will only love you, is that okay? I looked at him with disdain. What about your Xian Xian? He was momentarily stunned and blurted out dryly, Jia Xing, I have nothing to do with her anymore, I only have you. It seemed the Chen family had not told him the truth. I had to play the role of the good person. I revealed to him the truth about how Zhao Xuan Xuan had saved him. He trembled, his lips quivering in disbelief. Impossible, absolutely impossible. I did not wish to waste more breath on him and could only kindly inform him. Your beloved Xian Xian has gone to the brothel to live a life of luxury. And your parents are begging for food in the city. Your father's shop has gone bankrupt, unable to pay the debts, and he has sold off all their possessions, yet it is still not enough. Oh, and your grandmother, who loved you the most, is now lying in bed, crying every day. Chen Qing Yan's eyes were bloodshot with rage, filled with resentment. Finally, he erupted, Song Jia Xing, you wicked woman. I dusted off my shoulders. I am wicked? But if no one offends me, I will not offend anyone. You all deserve what you get. Chen Qing Yan was executed. His begging parents wept until their eyes were red, yet they were driven out of the city by the guards. Zhao Xuan Xuan, indulging in revelry every night, eventually fell ill. The madam of the brothel tossed her aside on the street, leaving her to fend for herself. I became a free woman. I also brought my dowry back to the Song residence. The emperor did not say much. He merely issued an edict for me to divorce Chen Qing Yan. Perhaps His Majesty felt that this marriage was never a good match to begin with. I was not affected by Chen Qing Yan's affairs. Now, I only wanted to manage my parents' shop well. In my spare time, I traveled across the land. The days ahead would surely be good ones.